Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well and that you're having a good day. And thank you so much for finding this video that talks you through assignment 1 on this level 5 coaching qualification. As you'll know from the earlier work, that there's plenty to be done, and this assignment 1 is the most academic bit of the work that you need to do for this level 5 qualification. But please do not worry, it does not have to be super academic. The idea of this video is to talk you through the answer book, but also to talk you through the additional materials in this folder. So I'm going to open the answer book and I'm going to share it with you, and I'll walk us through question by question. And what you'll see in the answer book is there's plenty of detail, so I don't need to say loads and loads and loads of things about it, but we do need to have a bit of a starting point. The first thing I want to say is that the ILM offers this word count, between 3,000 and 4,000 words. They are a bit vague on it and they don't check the word count, so you may find that that word count is just useful guidance. Some people stick to it, most people go over it by a bit, some people go over it by a lot. You really don't have to worry about it, but certainly don't spend time editing it down. That's really important. There are 3 sections in this assignment, and I'll go through each of the questions in each of the 3 sections in order, so you have a good idea about what you need. This note here about it being reflective work. Obviously we'll mark it, obviously the assessor will look at it, but this is not work for you to present anything to an assessor. This is work for you to be doing the learning, for you to know and develop and get your understanding, and that's really important. Some notes here about understanding your organisation. There are plenty of people who do the level 5 who aren't in senior leadership. Sometimes they're not even in an organisation. And this assignment does read a bit like you need to know lots about an organisation. You really don't. You don't have to be inside it. I think the background reading, the case studies you'll come across, some of the sample assignments, and what you know anyway from just working in and with organisations will be plenty enough. Plus your imagination, plus your speculation about what might be important. So please don't worry at all if you don't know organisations very, very well. Let's look at the questions. So we've laid out the book in this way, with each section with the headline of the section, each specific question, and a bit of guidance for your response. So I'm just going to say a bit more about the guidance for the response with each of the questions. So here, this first one, defining what coaching and mentoring is, the similarities and differences. You can worry less about the organisational context. This is about being able to be really clear, defining what coaching is, what mentoring is, where there's an overlap between the two, where you might use a mentoring style, a coaching style when you're mentoring. Be able to explain why organisations might use mentors or they might use coaching. What is a benefit of all? The important point here is, I think you need to be able to explain to other people out there, because there's still a misunderstanding, right? You should be able to explain well what is coaching, what is mentoring, and how they are different. Some people put a nice table in, some people put 2 tables, some people write a narrative. You'll see from some of the sample responses we've shared the different approaches you can take to this. 1.2, this is classic ILM language, evaluating how the organisational context affects coaching or mentoring. Effectively, what they're saying is what type of organisations are up for and are more suitable for coaching. And every organisation faces its own pressures. Some can go beyond their pressures to be able to organise coaching, others not so much. Some organisations are in a good place where they use lots and lots of learning and development approaches, others not so much. Some, they just simply haven't got the budget, they haven't got the time, or they haven't come across coaching. So thinking about the different factors that might affect it are really important and helpful. And I've given a list of half a dozen topic areas. You can cover 3 of them, 4 of them perhaps, to give a good and a rich answer. 1.3, the business rationale. So really, this is a question: why would we, any organisation, buy into coaching? And I think the best way is to think about the coaching experience. Think about when you've been coached, what that was like, what you learned. Think about what you are seeing from people you're coaching, what they're liking, how they're developing, how they're growing, how they're probably happier then that you can then translate that into what would that mean for an organisation. Organisations where people have been coached and coached well typically are better organisations to work in, typically are organisations where people are more fulfilled. There's some case studies you can read, so you'll have some good examples of that as well as your own experience. Finally, 1.4 in section 1 is thinking about how we measure the impact of coaching. Again, this is an important area, and it's an area where we've shared a few resources. The idea of this is to be able to say that there are ways of measuring it, and by doing a before and after, not trying to measure metrics like financial metrics, but trying to measure metrics like well-being, like happiness, like employee engagement, and self-reported improvement. So it's worth reading what other people have written about this. Have a look in the resources folder, and it's worth thinking about what you would say if someone would ask you, why should we engage in coaching? Those of you who are interested in selling coaching services, this is a question you would have already started thinking about. So think of your responses in that context. I hope that's useful. And finally for section 1, barriers. Now here what we've done is we've suggested that there are 3 different areas that you can think about. You can think about the individual barrier between the coach and their coachee. Think about the barriers that the organisation may offer, perhaps because they're not supportive of it or they don't quite know about it, they don't quite understand it. But then we can also think about the external barriers. And what I've suggested here, it's a nice table. A table maybe put three items in each of those areas, but you can also think about ways to overcome them. So for example, barrier between coach and coachee. Maybe there's a barrier that the coachee thinks that it's part of a big organisational performance management thing. So maybe a way of overcoming that is making sure it's really clear that coaching is confidential between coach and coachee. So that would be one example of a way that you could address that question. That's section 1. Let's push into section 2 now. So section 2, this is where we get into the skills, when we think about knowledge, skills and behaviours to be a good and a decent coach. Excuse me. We've combined 2.1 and 2.2 because they are asking for quite similar things. They're asking about your knowledge, skills and behaviours and also your communication skills. And I think that in coaching, those go hand in glove, don't they, really? So review is really important because we're not asking you just to list them. We're asking you to think about their importance. So you can write about questions and listening and pausing and empathy and structuring sessions. But you can also think about what impact having them will have on the coachee and what impact would not having them have on the coachee. I've put a note there about communication skills more generally, more widely, and you'll be able to draw in some extra thoughts, extra feelings about that. So that's the skills knowledge, 2.1, 2.2. 2.3, we have to write about managing relationships. So this is an opportunity really to think about different types of coach. So if you are a line manager coaching and you coach one of your colleagues and then you also manage them, it's really important that they know when you're coaching and when you're not coaching, and that coaching remains private and it's a different part of the dynamic between the two of you. If you're an external coach, then you might be thinking about how you work, how you're contracted in, how you have to manage the relationship with both your coachee and maybe the client who's brought you in, so that the coachee is the person who's respected, so that the person who is at the centre of all this. But you can also think about other aspects of the relationship. Think about the way you work, think about kindness, think about the coachee's worries, maybe worry about being evaluated or critiqued or judged. So a few notes there, a bit of guidance there. I hope that's useful. Now we have a model, and if you're looking at this after you've been in some of the training, you'll know that we have our own models. We don't use Grow or Oscar or any of those. If you do know one of those other models, you can use it, of course, or you could compare and contrast with the ones you would have learnt with us. You are reviewing it. So it's not just a description of what happens in each stage. You're talking about what you like about it, why this is a good model for you. and why it might work for coaches. So that's really important. Enjoy writing about this. I think lots of coaches who write about this gives them an opportunity to really understand and evaluate their own models. Last one, in section 2, thinking about reflective practice, thinking about support and supervision. And they use this word justify. And when they say justify, we're talking about a benefit and risk. So the idea of being able to say to yourself or to someone else that you should definitely build in a reflective practice. You should definitely have supervision or have peer supervision because it helps your practice. And you can think throughout this program how being reflective supports you. You know, we design our systems in a very reflective way so that you do really analyse your coaching. You do really reflect on it a lot. And we also provide tutorial and supervision support. So you will be having these experiences. If you choose to wait for 2.5 until you're a bit further down the track, you've had some hours, you've done some reflection, you've had some supervision, it's fine. It's one of the nice things about this assignment is you can park things and then come back to them. Let's push on to section 3. So section 3 talks about contracting and talked about managing the process. In training, you would have heard we use the words goals and partnership instead of contracting, but it's the same thing. The idea that we really value contracting, and we hope that you would have been valuing it as well. You can think about how we set up that initial relationship with that first goals and partnership session and think about why we do that and what you've seen when you've gone through that goals and partnership, that contracting process. We're doing it in module 2, so if you're watching this before then, you know, wait until then and then write about it. But also think about the contracting in any single coaching session. You know, how do we contract? How do we engage with our coaches and make sure that they understand what to expect and that we take a steer from them? You know, if they want us to challenge them, we do. If they want us not to, we don't. Be able to use this as a good way of talking about and writing about your practice. Last one, thinking about the bigger picture, right? So thinking about if you are an internal coach, how a whole process will be managed. So how it will be explained to a coachee, who would be offered coaching, who wouldn't be. Would there be some type of matching process where a coachee should be able to decide who is going to be their coach from a pool? Thinking about their sponsor, thinking about confidentiality, and making sure that the coach is well supported, so that the coach has support, supervision, somewhere they can go to, and also building in some sort of evaluation cycle. These are all areas I'm sure you'll be able to write half a dozen lines on each, and then you'll have a good and strong and rich answer. So that is the answer book. I've given you just a bit of extra guidance, I think, from what you would have already read from this Word document. I hope you found that useful. There are a couple of more things in this folder. I'm not going to go and look at the assignments. They're there, and I suppose what you can just see quickly here is we have categorised them from the standard ones, which are absolutely fine and passed, to the outstanding ones, to the really awesome ones where people had the time and energy to throw everything in. It's absolutely fine to do a standard one, but you do what feels right for you and what feels comfortable for you and your practice. We also have in this folder some supporting materials. Some of it's a bit technical, like the return on investment information, like the ethical frameworks and codes of ethics and so on. But there are some documents that you'll be able to read. My encouragement is skim, read, extract some notes, use them to support some of these questions. It should be evident which ones relate to which questions. So I hope that stuff there will be useful for you. So there we are, folks. That's assignment 1. Here are the resources. One of the things that is great about assignment 1 is that you can take it piece by piece. You can write one section at a time or one question at a time. And I hope you find it enjoyable. I hope you find it interesting, and I hope you find it is a really good way of being able to put down something on paper that really articulates and encourages reflection about you and your coaching practice. Have a good day, happy writing, and of course, happy coaching.